Hello everyone and welcome to this BKL webinar. It's been a little while. It's good to be back. My name's Anthony Newgrosh and we hope you're all having a good summer. So today on our webinar we're going to be looking at landlords and making tax digital. I'm delighted to be joined on board today by Chris Smith, who heads up our personal tax team. Hi Chris.
Hi everyone.
And we've got a special guest star for you today, James Kilpatrick from Hammock. Hi James.
Hey everybody.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk in more detail, I'm sure, exactly why James is here and how he can help us all. Thank you for coming on board, though. As always, just before we start, do feel free to chat away and to let us have any questions. We'll do our best to answer those as we go along. If not, you all will receive a recording of this webinar for you to listen back as many times as you would like. And if there are any questions we haven't been able to answer during the webinar, we'll try and either cover those off when we send out the slides and the copy of the presentation, or if more appropriate, we can try and respond privately to you. And James will also explain other methods by which you can get in touch. So enough from me by way of introduction. Let's get cracking, as it were. So what are we going to look at today? Well, as I say, we're talking about making tax digital for income tax. What's it all about? How will it affect you as a landlord? And we'll introduce you, as I say, to James and Hammock and how they can help and how we take this forward. So that's, as I say, the broad agenda, but any questions, very happy to digress into related topics as best we can. We'll aim to finish within about an hour, but if we need to have a bit more time for questions at the end, then James, thank you very much for your time today and for helping us out. So let's start by talking about making tax digital. Now, I remember the word digital, it's very overused. I got my first digital watch, I think, Chris, in 1981, I think it was, and it's taken, what, HMRC 41 years to catch on with this concept of digital. But you tell us, what making tax digital for income tax, what's the headline here, Chris?
It actually feels like this was announced at about 1981 by the government and by the revenue. I think it was George Osborne actually that must have been. I can't remember the exact date, but it would have been about 2014, 2015, something like that, where they announced these grand plans for making tax digital, and it broadly came about because Osborne at the time looked around at other countries and realised that their technology advancements meant that they could modernise the tax systems in part, and I think in part they could collect tax a little bit earlier. Equally, keeping records more up to date, making it easy for the revenue and just getting on board. I think the revenue want to get away from this carry a bag of receipts business that we still see as accountants, and they're trying to modernise to make it easier for them, which we'll come on to some positives and some negatives of that. But probably that's the idea. It's taken a long time to come through. So said it was initially about 2015, something along those lines. It was delayed as most things with COVID. This should have actually been in operation now, okay. But COVID has put a bit of a delay on that. So it's taking its time. And probably what does it mean for landlords? It's so this is hitting in April 24. That seems like a long way away for people out there. You might be thinking straight about why are we doing this now? But in the tax world, it's not that far away. It really isn't. You have to be prepared for these things. You can't go into it. Something's happened, and it's just a dramatic change. You've got to be prepared well in advance. And so it's not that tax year 14-15 is not too far away. Probably what it means is that for those landlords. And we're concentrating on landlords today. There is a separate making tax digital for self-employed individuals. It's a different process. So we're focusing on landlords today, but it's going to affect those landlords with income of at least £10,000. But the big point to think there is it's not just income on the weird one. It's not just income on rental. You have to consider if you're self-employed as well. So, for example, self-employed have got a profit or income, of £8,000 a year. And you're a landlord with £2,000 a year of rental income, then you are affected by this. So certainly most of our clients we see will be in that category and therefore will be affected. So the idea from a BKL viewpoint is we've got to get this out to you guys. We've got to tell you about it. We've got to get you prepared. There's lots of changes coming, and we'll just briefly go through the major changes, which is digital records is going to be one. But the big changes, you're going to be, so you, us as advisors, your advisors, you're going to be doing quarterly filings. So at the moment, most people will be used to nearing December, January, or for those really good clients, April, May, or partway through the year, giving us their records to prepare a tax return. Giving us your rental statements, giving us an Excel spreadsheet maybe, or in the worst case, giving us that carrier bag full of receipts and bits of paper. And we prepare your tax return based upon that information. And you pay your tax, you have your tax return in by January, and you have your tax return in and pay your tax by the January. So that's changing. The revenue is saying, similar with VAT, for those that are familiar with the way we work with VAT, you're going to have quarterly filing. So on a quarterly basis, we've got to tell the revenue of the income you've received in that period. So you can see on the slide there the quarterly filing dates that are going to be required. So every August, November, February and May, we've got to make a submission. On top of that, if we click to the next slide, you'll see that as well as the quarterly filings that need to be made in a digital format, we've then got an end of period statement that needs to be made, which summarises the quarterly statements broadly. And that's there because people will tend to make some estimates, or there'll be some adjustments that will need to be made. So the end of period statement corrects that. So that's another filing that has to go to the revenue. And then finally, we have to do a final declaration, which effectively you can imagine it's the if you like, tax return that we do at the moment. And those two deadlines are both a January deadline.
So if I understand this correctly, Chris, sorry, we're now saying you've effectively got 6 lots of returns to do instead of just your annual tax return. Is that correct?
Correct. So it's six filings to the revenue that we'll need to do, which it's quite a daunting prospect. Certainly for those individuals that, dare I say, can be a little bit late, can be a bit difficult to get hold of at times. Aren't up to date.
We don't have any clients like that. Chris,
no, we're quite good. Most of ours are okay, but I'm sure there's other advisors on the line who know what we're talking about. We might have 1 or 2 clients, but it's a realisation. People do put things off and worry about it at the time, and the revenue have put this initiative of MTD in to stop that happening, to get people up to date with their affairs. And it does mean 6 statements.
Okay, and how's this going to affect the traditional end of January panic for accountants, Chris?
Well, we're still going to have statements to file by the end of January. I think the point is, if we're quite organised, there are positives to this. For us, it forces people into a better system, which could mean actually that the January filings, or your final filings, can be smoother. It can be done. Most of the work can be done partway or through the year on a quarterly basis.
This is about reporting, isn't it? Is the bottom line. Does it affect the payment dates at the moment? And I think you alluded to that, but at the moment. When do you pay your tax?
I mean, at the moment, there's no announcement on this. It's going to be January, and your payments on account as you are. But my feeling, and it's purely my feeling at the moment, is that Osborne brought this in because we're one of the slowest. We were at the time, and we still are, I think, in a lot of cases, one of the slowest paying nations in respect to tax. Now, if by bringing in a quarterly statements, it'd be very easy, like with VAT, the cynic will say, to bring in quarterly payments, which could mean paying tax on that quarterly basis 30 days after your filing date. So as we go along, you submit your quarterly return, you pay some tax 30 days later. Now that, to be clear again, that's not announced as happening, but I would be pretty certain that when people get this running for a couple of years and it's running smoothly, they might dip in and say, now we're going to change things and change some payment dates.
All right. Well,
the other bit to consider on this is realise the point. There are going to be penalties, so it can't be we just get sloppy. We don't worry about it. There is a new penalty system coming, so again, it's got to be done on time. And I think from our side, from BKL, from other accountants out there, this is potentially an influx of work coming in. There's a lot of chasing clients if they're not organised. And the last thing we want to really do on this is be disorganised, but spending a lot of time with clients chasing things up, going through workings if it's not organised, and building up a lot of time, because our time costs come into it and fees come into it, is a realisation. So I'm speaking to a lot of accountants, people are worried in that we might have to substantially increase our fees. And why BKL are going through this exercise and why we have Hammock with us today is we're looking at this as an opportunity to, one, modernise, but not increase fees. And we will come on to that a bit later.
Okay. Couple of quick questions, if I may, at this point. Oh, another one's just popped in. So these have all come in anonymously, which is fine. Feel free to let us know who you are if you'd like a private reply. Does this affect rents from overseas properties or only UK properties?
No, this is if you're on UK tax, it's UK rental income, so it's overseas properties as well.
Okay. And one, well, not so much a question, but more a comment we can invite you guys to reflect on. Small landlords will sell up, is the view that this will just simply be sort of too much of a burden for people who've got, one or two buy-to-lets. I suppose they may be below the £10,000 threshold, but pretty small, to be honest.
I tend to disagree with that one, because I think when you see the demo, you see Hammock. We've got the guys here today, and we'll come on to that bit, but it's not just tax, the benefit of this software. There's some other advantages there as well. So I don't think that there would be a reason for selling because the revenue bringing in a quarterly system. The point would be if you get organised and digitalise your records, modernised, dare I say, in some cases, then I wouldn't see that as a reason to sell. I think it's actually there are big benefits.
Okay. Final question then before we move on. Chris, you talked before about this £10,000 minimum threshold. You said you also include self-employed income when in ascertaining whether you meet that £10,000. The question's been asked about what if I've got PAYE income? What if I'm employed, not self-employed? Does that get aggregated or not?
So the PAYE doesn't take into account for the £10,000. So, an example, £50,000 individual earning £50,000, rental income, not profit, of £8,000, they're not caught by this.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you've got £8,000 rental self-employment of 2,000, you're caught by this. That's quite clear.
Okay. We've got time for one final question then before we move on this, if I may. We're also, this being tax, there's a lot of moving parts at the moment. We've also got basis period reform going on, so we're moving to a sort of actual year basis. Do you want to just clarify how this interacts with that?
This doesn't affect it because on the rental we are on a 5th of April year end, so we don't have a separate basis period for your rental income. So this is not directly affected in that way. There are, if you're self-employed, there's the basis reform kicks in, so it's other connotations. But for this purpose, it's not one. I'm not going to try and link the two.
And that's perhaps something for another webinar. We'll come back on that, as it were. Okay, so look, it's coming in whether we like it or not. As with everything in life, I suppose, it's an opportunity and a threat, Chris. So what's sort of the bad news here?
So as we said, we've got extra submissions rather than one tax return. Now we've said there are 5 submissions, it's actually 6. The 5 relate to the rental, and then you've got a 6th, which is other income or other tax reliefs to put in. So it replaces, it's greater filing to the revenue, which can in turn, as we mentioned, if not organised correctly, a lot of advisors will be charging additional fees for this.
But you said this was bad news, Chris.
Yeah, bad news for individuals.
Okay.
Believe me, I don't really want the additional workload if it's not organised. It's going to cause big problems within the professional industry. They're not going to be staffed up for its other reasons. So look, we don't want to create this crazy amount of work and have to pass fees across to clients. And of course, as equally as we mentioned, the potential for quarterly payments, I think realistically will happen, but that's my view.
All right, but that's purely speculative, isn't it, to be fair? At the moment?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the bad news, but as you say, it's also an opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, so as we've said, it will organise the records. There's, as you'll see in a minute, the ability to have everything on a phone or tablet, modernise essentially. It makes it easier, have information available to you instantly, keeping all your records in one place. I know as a landlord, tenancy agreements, gas certificates, etc. Some people will have agents that will deal with all that and say it's with my agent. It's fine. Others will want to keep records. It might be an email. It might be printed in a folder. This centralises it. so it makes it a lot easier. And of course, keeping up to date with the revenue, you don't want to fall behind. There could be other reasons. Having penalties is one. They're changing the penalty regime to essentially start scoring you. So, one filing, you're on a naughty step. 2 filings, it starts getting serious, etc., etc. So you want to make sure you're up to date with the revenue. This will be digital, so we'll be submitting digital records, not bits of paper. Therefore, they have the power to analyse that data digitally. So, gone are the days of really trying to manipulate things with paper. It's all on digital record. It makes it easier for the revenue to go through. So, embracing it, it's not a bad thing. There are a lot of positives to embrace this change.
Okay, funnily enough, someone's just asked about HMRC and MTD. Do we think HMRC are ready for this? I mean, are their systems set up? I think you can register early, can't you? Which would suggest they are ready. They are getting there.
There is a beta service. There's this is available now to use. So they've been testing, they've been running. It was delayed because they weren't fully ready and they weren't staffed properly. So they're always quite open to say we're not ready, and we'll push it back a bit. And of course, there will be some teething problems early on, and they've always been quite open to that as well. So even with things with penalties such as they've taken a step back and said, oh, hold on, we might not charge this time around because there's been a certain failure. So if they're not fully there, they're usually a little bit of leeway. I'd expect them to be most of the way there, given how long it's taken for this to come through.
Okay, all right. But let's just so we're absolutely clear, this is not affecting the way we calculate your income, or the amount of your taxable income, I should say. Those rules are the same. This is just how we record and report your income.
Correct. Yeah, everything's exactly the same. It's reporting to the revenue. The big change, it's got to be digital. And some individuals won't see that at the moment. They might give it to the accountant, i.e. us, to make a filing. But it's a very different way we've got to submit and how your records are kept. Your record keeping's got to be in a digital format and available to the revenue.
Okay. And one final technical question we've just been asked again, all coming through anonymous today, but all good. Is it on a cash basis or an accruals basis we should be reporting, Chris?
So the difference is still on an accruals basis on rentals. It's no different. The taxation of it's still the same. All the rules regarding cash and accruals is still in place. So there's no change there. It's purely a reporting basis, a reporting requirement that we're looking at.
Okay, right. So if we move on, so we've got this new system, as we say, whether we like it or not. How can we help landlords and our clients and our customers deal with this?
The big point we're looking at, we go back to fees as a case in point. Some accountants will see this as an opportunity to charge higher fees. BKL, we're different. We're quite a modern firm. We do look at technology. We do want to help clients out. So we've gone through an exercise of identifying ways to help clients on this where we can keep fees at a lower level. We're not going to recharge huge amounts for doing extra work. And one of the outcome of this, after a lot of research, was partnering up with a firm called Hammock, who obviously James is with us today. He's going to give you a demo of the software that we're essentially going to be pushing on to clients to sign up and use. And you'll see in a second as to why it's beneficial for individuals. Hammock are a good firm, been around a long period of time. I'll let James talk about that. But ultimately, it's not just MTD as a benefit for this. There are other benefits to landlords. So it ticks a lot of boxes. It does help clients, landlords in a lot of ways. So I think at this point, if we hand over to James, and I'll let James do a brief demo.
While we just do that, there's one final question we'll just ask. That's come in. Is this just for, I think the question is this just for individuals owning properties or for companies? I think the point there is making tax digital is coming for companies, but not until I think it's April 2026, we've been told at the moment. So at the moment, we're just looking at individuals who pay income tax on their rental income. Agree, Chris?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so one more question then, if I may. Thank you. You're very keen today. What about jointly owned property? How does that interact with that £10,000 limit, Chris?
From memory, I need to double check on it, but I'm pretty sure it's per person. Yeah, it is per person.
Okay. So what, you'd split it?
As I say, on that point, one of the things I will be showing you in Hammock is exactly how you do manage that. If you do have joint ownership property, you can still do it. You don't need to be doing one each. You can do it all within the one Hammock account. I'll go through all that in a second.
Okay, so at this point, James, over to you. Again, thank you for joining us today, and you're going to demonstrate what you can do to assist landlords, etc., in dealing with MTD. So over to you, and I'll chip in with any questions as we go along as normal, but hopefully you can all see James's slide with Hammock in the top corner now.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for having me. And hello to everyone watching, whether live or on the recording. So just a very quick intro to Hammock before I dive into the demo. So we have been around for around 4 years. And, you know, whilst we're kind of here talking about an MTD solution, that is not what Hammock was built for. Hammock is a landlord platform. It helps to automate all your bookkeeping, organise everything, basically do all the work for you, and then give you all these additional benefits. But it does turn out that it does also help accountants get ready for making tax digital. So, you know, I'm sure, you know, part of the reason that BKL have chosen Hammock is because they didn't want something that just ticks the box for MTD. They want something that actually improves the, you know, the service they're offering to their clients. And I say we have, you know, thousands of landlords who come to us directly, but thousands more who come to us via their accountant. As we go through, you know, as part of the package that BKL have purchased, you guys obviously get a BKL account. I think actually Chris might be about to post the link, the registration link into the chat. So if anybody did want to sign up and, you know, register and almost go along with the demo, they can, but we'll also be sharing that at the end and also in an email after this as well. Anyway, with that being said, let's go through. As Anthony mentioned, if you guys have questions, please do ask them. And then Anthony, if you see anything that seems relevant, just jump in and interrupt me. Otherwise, we'll cover everything at the end. But look, this is Hammock. And, you know, like a lot of softwares, you've got this menu down the left-hand side here. I'm just starting you off on the properties page. And this is also where you will land as soon as you sign up to Hammock. And you know, I love starting my demos here because I think straight away it shows you a lot of the value here. So, you know, we've got all your individual properties listed here. You can actually see how much am I making on each of my properties. So you can see your profit per year. It will even highlight if any of your tenants owe you money. If you want to drill in even further, you can kind of see graphically how you're doing. You can get up-to-date property valuations, check your loans to value, you know, all the stuff that it's just really useful to have, you know, at your fingertips. Even little things like, you know, if you add your property, we immediately pull an image from Google Street View, so you see your property there as well. You know, it's like, this is not a system that was built for accountants. This is a system that was built for landlords. And I think that comes across really, really nicely on this page. The other key thing I want to talk about, and I sort of hinted this actually before, is this idea of portfolios, because this is how we show different ownership structures. So any landlord who registers for Hammock, you'll always start with one portfolio, and it will be this one here, the personal portfolio. And that is basically set up where you own it 100%. So if all your properties are just in your name, then you will not need to add any other portfolios. But you may have somebody on this call who've got, you know, a property they share with a partner or a sibling, or properties they have in a limited company. And that is where the additional portfolios will come in. So just to give you an idea, this first property here I own with my wife. She owns 75% and I own 25%. So I've added that portfolio and I've linked up that property and I've called it joint ownership, although, you know, you can call them whatever you like. The next two are in my personal name, so they just stay in my personal portfolio. And this bottom one here I've got in a limited company. And it just means that as a landlord, you can manage all your properties in one place. But when we get to the tax statement area, you'll see exactly where the value is for you and your accountant in that system. So that will all, I think, become clear. But that being said, obviously you're looking at this, you're probably thinking, look, that looks great. I'd love to see, you know, how much I'm making, but where do these figures actually come from? And the answer to that is they come from your bank feed. So you connect your bank account or multiple bank accounts up to Hammock, and then you can start tracking and categorizing your live transactions. So every day we pull in new transactions, and once you start setting up your account, then Hammock starts to learn and starts doing that bookkeeping for you. So actually, you know, like most systems, any work really is on day one. After that, a lot of it is automated, and you just kind of cleaning things up. As we get to the end, I'll talk a bit more about how it works. So we've got our bank account connected here. Got all the filters here to help you find specific transactions, and then underneath that, I've just got all my bank feed, all my transactions feeding through. You can see anything that already has a green category. Those are already being tracked and categorised, linked to a specific property. Everything else is just being ignored. And that's obviously really useful for those of you who maybe do use your personal bank account, where you have other transactions in there. You can just ignore those. You only need to track the transactions which relate to property, and then the rest Hammock will ignore. So I just want to give you an idea of just how easy it is to start tracking. So let's imagine this insurance payment here relates to one of my properties. I simply click on the transaction, and this menu is going to open up on the right hand side, giving me all of our expense categories. So in this case, I would click insurance, and let's say this is my mortgage protection insurance, and let's say this is for 23 New Church Road. So I click save, and just like that, you can see that is now tracked and categorised. Now, because that is a regular payment, just by tracking that one transaction, going forward, that is now going to start tracking automatically. So next month, I'll just get a notification to let me know that my mortgage protection insurance has gone out, but I won't need to do anything. But equally, when you get signed up and we help you get set up, I'll talk a bit more about that part at the end actually. But when we're helping you get set up, we also wanted to make it just as easy to go backwards, to the start of the tax year or even the start of the last tax year. So once I've tracked this one transaction here, I can just scroll down on the right. And I've got these two options to track further transactions. So I've got search and track, and I've got view matching transactions. So I'll show you both because they are subtly different. And let's start with this one. So you can see straight away, Hammock is telling me, you've tracked that one transaction, we've found some other similar ones. So I just click here, and Hammock says, right, this is this payment you've just tracked in July. And these are all the transactions in your bank feed that look similar. And if you look at the dates, you can see it's all June, May, April, etc. So these are just my monthly payments, going all the way back to last June, in fact. So I can just select all of those, click track, and just like that, I've just done a year's worth of insurance payments. And I say, moving forward, they're just going to track themselves. It works exactly the same with rental income. So actually, I'm going to use the keyword filter here because I know that my tenant puts their initials in their payment reference. I'm sure most of you will have some, you search for their surname or the address or whatever. And look, it just isolates all my payments. And you can see these all go back to the start of the tenancy in October. So again, I can click on any of these. This time I get the income categories, and we're going to select rental income. Again, going to link it to a property. But this time, because it's rent, I also need to link it to a tenant. And as I've only got one tenant in there, it auto selects. So we're going to link this to Tom. Again, click save. You can see that is now tracked and categorized. Again, just like before, because I've tracked that one, any future payments are going to track automatically. So with rent, really nice features for you as the landlord is, A, you're going to get notified when your rent gets paid. But also, if the rent hasn't been paid, after a couple of days, you also get a notification from us that your rent is late. And the reason that's important for anyone who does, have tenants who aren't great with payments, you'll know that statistically, if a missing payment is missing for more than a week, your chances of getting that money decrease by about 50%. So the faster you can be chasing people for payment, the better. And this just means that Hammock will do that for you. But again, I also want to track all these other payments. So just like before, scroll down here, and this time, because I've already filtered, I'm going to use this other option, search and track. So I click that, and now you can see all of these transactions are clickable as well. So I can either tick them one at a time, or again, just select them all, update 9 transactions, and it's done. So hopefully what I want to see here is to show you here is just how easy it is to track these transactions. Chris, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think just to make clear as well, I know there'll be some clients out there, some individuals that are going through this and seeing technology updates and, or I'm a bit scared or daunted to do a lot of this. You don't need to be. There's either Hammock support all the way through, which is a service that we make sure our clients have got Hammock support, but equally the BKL support. So there's a large chunk of this that we can equally do for you. It's certainly about getting signed up and knowing. I think we're trying to get landlords to take ownership, because there's that element of there's other interests, there's other areas here that's going to benefit landlords. But don't be daunted by James going through some of this and clicking through and thinking this seems a lot to take in. As he's mentioned, a lot of it's automated. So once it's set up once, automatic things happen. It's only when there's big changes that you really need to go back in and readdress. So I think just bear with it at this stage. If you're getting that inkling of this seems like a lot of clicking, it seems like a lot on screen. It's not once it's up and running, and we support everybody through getting up and running.
Yeah, and actually, as you know, none of you are going to have to go through this initial setup on your own, because part of the package that BKL have purchased includes all of you get an onboarding session with our support team. So that is a one-on-one session over Zoom with you doing the work, but one of our client service team guiding you through the process. So you absolutely will have a ton of support. But I would also say once you start using it, you will see just how easy it is. That is the feedback we get from all our landlords. I love it because it's so easy.
The other thing I was going to ask James briefly was we've shown this to some clients already, and two questions we get quite a bit. One was I'm already using Zero, can I just not use Zero? And the other one, which I think leads into the answer, is I don't get paid direct. I use an agent.
Yeah.
So what's the benefit? I use an agent. They do that for me. I've got an agent. I've got an accountant. Why do I need to use this, or how do I use this?
Yes, absolutely. So on the Zero point, I suspect those clients are running their properties through a limited company rather than self-assessment. At this stage, our main focus is on making tax digital. We will be bringing out those type of features like balance sheet, trial balance later this year. But for now, if you're owning your properties in your personal name, then yeah, this is absolutely a replacement for Zero, and it's easier to use, cheaper, etc. On your point about letting agents, really good point. So what I'm going to show you that via this one other screen. So just to recap what I've shown you so far, we tracked some expenses, then we just tracked some rent. Both hopefully you can see were kind of similar. But how does that feed through the platform? So you've already seen your profit and loss per property, but again, another huge advantage of being completely specialist to landlords is that we also give you your rental history per tenant. So I've got my different tenants here, and if we look at Tom, which is the one that you just saw me track the rent of, you can see Tom, my tenant's called Tom, he lives at 23 New Church Road, he pays £420 every month, starting in October. Now, this is obviously just an example. You can use any rental amount, any rental frequency, but just these three pieces of data are all Hammock needs to build this rent table, which starts when the tenancy starts in October, and then every month it will show you how many transactions occurred, what was actually due, what did you actually receive, and then what is the outstanding balance. You would be amazed how many landlords will sign up to Hammock, start tracking their payments, and discover missing rent payments they did not even know about. It really does give you just so much more visibility on your payments. I'm sure there's people on this call just like me. Actually, I'm a landlord, but Hammock is my main job, so it's something that's definitely on the side. When you don't give your full focus, sometimes there'll be those ones where you don't check that the rents come in, you don't check this, and Hammock helps you do that. You can also even download this rental history and share that with your tenant if they do owe you money. But this, as Chris said, this is an example of a tenant where I manage the property myself. So Tom pays £420. That is the amount that hits my bank account. And there'll definitely be people on this call who use a letting agent. And again, because we are specialists, we have a really neat solution for that. So I'll quickly show you how that works. And we're going to do that. We're going to go and look at my other tenant called Mark Jones. So you can see here, Mark lives at 141 Corn Street. He pays £400 a month. But here, because when I've added this tenancy, the first question it asks you is, do you use a letting agent? And in Mark's case, I've said, yes, I do. My agent is called Moving On, and my agent fees are 10.5% plus that, or whatever it is, which Hammock has calculated out for me at 53.65. So Hammock already knows how much my tenant pays and how much I pay my agent. And if we just scroll down, I've tracked all these payments up to May, but I purposely left June and July missing, just because I want to show you how the payments work when you use a letting agent, because it's really cool. So let's jump back to my bank feed, and I'm actually going to search by date this time and just find the June payment. Now, this is the obligatory point of every demo where I have to say ignore this, that it says child tax credit. Unfortunately, I don't have any control over this dummy data. You can just imagine that's the name of my letting agent if you prefer. But the real important thing here is this amount, 346.35. So this is an example of a normal month where my tenant has paid £400, my agent has taken the fee and they've passed it across to me. So if I'm setting this up for the first time, just like before, I'm going to say, right, that is rental income for 141 Corn Street. My tenant's called Mark, and I click save. And you'll notice there's a big difference here. So rather than it just saying that's £346 of rent, because Hammock knows I use an agent, it just does the split for me. So it knows that really what that represents is that you received £400 of income and you paid £53 of letting agent fees. And that happens automatically. Any month going forward now, where that's the amount I receive, Hammock will track that for me, split that for me. So it means your P&L is correct and your tax return's correct. However, as I'm sure the thought going through lots of people's minds here who use agents is like, okay, but some months, what about when I have to pay for a gas certificate? What's the maintenance? So let's jump forward to July. And let's just use this £137 as an example. Again, my agent seems to have changed his name to Mr. John Smith. But let's say so this £137 is what I got, because let's say I had some repairs on my kitchen sink. So this is one of the few transactions in Hammock that would not track automatically, because there's one tiny thing that you need to do as the landlord. So let's have a look. If I just click on that and I say, right, that's rental income for 141 Corn Street. Look here, I hope you can see on the screen, without me doing anything, this rent is less than expected. Do you want to create an expense for the difference? So if I know, I look at my invoice and I can see, oh yeah, no, I had to pay £208 to fix the sink, then I would say, yes, I would like to create an expense. I can choose any category for that, but it's almost always going to be maintenance. And then within maintenance, again, it could be anything, could be a gas certificate, but most of the time it is repairs or maintenance. So I just click save, and again, just like before, it split that payment, but it still knows I did receive the full rent, I did pay my agent fees, but I also had these repairs. And again, all of that happens automatically, and it's really, really simple. If you want to, for your own records and for your accountant records, you could add a note here and just say to fix, if I can type, the bathroom sink, just in case you ever come back to it and you need to know. But you can also attach the invoice. So if your letting agent sends you, emails you an invoice every month, you can drag and drop it into here, or you can search on your computer, pick a document, and just upload it. And just like that, you've then got digital record that you can look at whenever, and your accountant can look at whatever. And just here in the transactions, you can quite clearly see when you've left a note or a document that will be shown on the main screen.
James, a couple of questions, if I may, that have come in. I forgot to scroll down, apologies. So people are asking, can you set alerts for sort of annual reminders about your gas safety certificate, your insurance, etc., etc.? Can the software help us there?
Absolutely. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit here because this was going to be my piece de resistance at the end, but let's go for it now. So obviously what we've been looking at so far is kind of bookkeeping stuff, but there's tons of other stuff in here, which I again, I will cover at the end, but let's just, because you asked, let's jump into documents. So as all landlords will know, and I certainly know, there's so many things you have to remember. I manage my properties myself, so I use an agent to find the tenants, but then from then on I take over. That means even for one property, I might have 3 insurance policies, a gas certificate, electric certificate, an EPC, a mortgage, all sorts. All have different expiry dates. I can never find the documents when you need them. But this is where Hammock comes in. So you can upload all of your important documents here. So whenever you need to look at something, you just click on it and you can look at it straight away. Link it to the right tenant or property or portfolio. But most importantly, set the expiry date. Because then Hammock will start sending you reminders, and you get sort of 4 or 5 reminders before you ever reach that expiry date, which hopefully means you'll never be in that situation where something goes wrong with the flat and you realise your insurance expired 3 months ago.
Okay.
Actually, just while we're on here, this is also where you'll see any receipts or invoices you upload. This is where you and your accountant can get them from as well.
One of the other bits we've seen before are landlords that receive cash.
Yeah.
And it might be the cash generally every month. Here's a bit of cash, and they pay into the bank, and I'm sure that's an easy one to track. But we've had individuals that receive cash,
yeah,
might spend it before it's banked.
Absolutely. So yeah, there's a couple of ways to add manual transactions. So if it's an expense, you typically would just come to the transaction. The example I always use, because I did it recently, is I went and got some new keys cut and I paid for it in cash. So I'll just say, right, let's just say I did that today. Cost me 16 quid. I'd probably put that through as replacement of items. And let's say it was for 23 New Church Road. So I can add that transaction. It will feed into my transaction list here, just like everything else. But on the right hand side, you can quite clearly see in blue, it says manual instead of bank. So both you and your accountant will know, when a transaction has been added yourself. You can also do a CSV upload. So if you have, say, a credit card statement and you just want to download it into an Excel file and upload it, that's what this upload button is for just here. Really, really easy to do. On the rent side, which I guess is probably what you were talking about a bit, Chris, let's go into some tenancies. Let's go into Robert Green, who you can see is in arrears. And he's in arrears because in November he had a missing payment, okay? But let's imagine that actually wasn't really a missing payment, they just paid me in cash. Then what I can actually do here, just click Actions, leave that as mark as paid. I could also, if I needed to have a write-off rent, you could do that here as well, but I would leave it as mark as paid, put the amount and click Save. And then you can see for 19th, you've now got a manual payment instead of bank to bank, and the rest is as it were. So yeah, adding manual transactions, absolutely no problem at all.
So people are similarly asking, what if somebody rents a couple of properties and pays you a lump sum for the two? I take it we can handle that as well, to split it between properties.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one good example, but also what if your tenant pays you the rent and the deposit in one transaction, or you pay an insurance policy for 3 of your properties all as one payment. So there is lots of reasons to split a transaction. I'll just use this one just because it's here. Let's imagine that this was some insurance for 2 of my properties. Instead of selecting a category here, I just come up and click split transaction, and then I can break this down however I want. So I could say, right, £10 of this was, I don't know, an admin fee for 11 Newcastle Road, and the other £10 was, I don't know, some insurance. Maybe it's my contents insurance. It could be on 11 Newcastle, or it could even be on a completely different property. You can split a transaction however you like. Once it's done, you see there it says fully reconciled. When it adds up, the difference will be 0, and you can just put finish. And then it just looks just like the transaction I showed you before. So you can see here, it says multiple track transactions, and then it shows you underneath how it's been broken down. So yeah, absolutely full flexibility on that side of things.
We touched upon it earlier, but the joint rental, husband and wife being typical case. Yeah, so yes, if we jump forward actually to the tax statement quickly, because obviously we're tracking all these transactions. As the landlord, you're getting your P&L by property, you're getting reminders for late rent, you're getting to see your rental history per tenant and making sure you're not owed any money. But we're here talking about MTD, and this is actually where the tax statement comes in. So if we go to the tax statement page, and in reality, as a landlord, you might not come here very often. This might be something that's more that you need for your accountant. But this is really the first time that you see those 3 portfolios that I mentioned right at the start. You may have even forgotten that I mentioned it, because when you're tracking things, it almost doesn't matter. But this is why it's important. So I've got my 3 portfolios, and if I go into my personal portfolio here, you can see at the top that I own 100% of this portfolio, and I've got 1 property that's in the property income section. The reason it's only 1 there is because I've also got furnished holiday let, which I haven't really talked much about, but that does feed into a separate part of the tax return. But in here, I've got 1 property feeding my main UK property income. I can then filter this by tax year. So if we look at the tax year that's just finished, that's the last complete year, it will then give me my headline figures here, so what my total taxable income and taxable expenses are. But most importantly, it gives you and your accountant the boxes they need to submit to HMRC. And this is the thing that you're going to be doing quarterly. So you see them all here. Underneath that, you just have all the transactions which make up those totals. So anything that I have tracked to this portfolio or a property in this portfolio will be in here. These are also dynamic. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh God, how have I spent £843 on legal fees or whatever? You can just click on that box. This will update. And I can say, oh, okay, yeah, it's just my accountancy fees and my letting agent fees. So you can kind of sense check it a bit there. To Chris's point, though, that joint ownership, let's go and have a look at my joint ownership portfolio. So I've got it here. Let's go in and view it.
I think, as I said to you at the start, so I only own 25% of this one. So that's how I've set it up. I put me as 25% owner. I've got one property in here. Again, let's look at the tax year that's just finished. And I can see, you know, we get all the same figures, but this time you can see under taxable income, the total for the portfolio is actually 11,000. But my 25% is what Hammock is highlighting here, which is 2,800. Same here with all these boxes. It does tell you what the total is, but it's highlighting James's 25%. And when it comes to making tax digital, you know, this is why if you have different portions of different properties, that's an absolute nightmare for you and the accountant to try and calculate. But Hammock does all that for you. So Hammock is going to add together all my figures from my personal portfolio, plus my 25% from here, plus any other percentages I might have of any others, and it just adds them all together into that one set of numbers which you're going to submit to HMRC. But what's also lovely is if my wife Penny happens to be a client as well, or you know, whether she is or she isn't actually, you know, whether Penny is logged into Hammock or not. By the way, she can absolutely have her own login, but she doesn't obviously. If I can tell you from my own actual real life, my wife has absolutely no interest in logging into any of this stuff. Whether she does or she doesn't, if I click on Penny, Penny owns 75% of the portfolio, and then I've got all her figures as well. So she just knows it's being taken care of, and my accountant's happy because he's got everything from both of us.
All right, James, can I interject with a few questions at this point?
Please, yes, please.
Right, where shall we start? Okay, so let's start here, shall we? Will the MTD submissions be made through Hammock, or is that something that Chris will do as BKL as your accountant? Who submits what, as it were? Where do we go from this stage?
So that is, I guess that's probably a question for Chris potentially, because you have the option for either. But in general, what we recommend, I guess, or what the default seems to be, is that the way this will work is that we will be chasing that. We will be nudging the landlord to say, look, this quarter has just finished. Here's your 3 months. And for, you know, for many, especially your small landlords, that really could just be 3 rent payments, 3 mortgage payments, 3 insurance payments, and you're just going to tick a box to say, yes, I'm happy with that. Now that will either go straight to HMRC, or there'll be a step where BKL, or somebody from BKL will just jump in and quickly review it. But either way, it really is that simple.
We certainly envisage we're stepping in to make sure we've reviewed the information, we're quite happy with the information, we make a submission on our software essentially.
And there will also be reports in Hammock which will, you know, it will show you a quarter-on-quarter submission, and if there's something glaringly different to last quarter, it will highlight it. I say for most landlords, most of your transactions are regular and recurring, so most of them will track themselves. I say if you use a letting agent, those months where there is an additional expense or multiple expenses, you will have to do that. Obviously, if you go to Tesco and you buy a load of cleaning materials, you know, you really want to be going in and categorising that, because the more expenses you categorise, the lower your tax bill is going to be. But generally, you know, so much of it is automated that really for both the accountant and the landlord, it should just be more of a review process rather than like actively doing work every quarter. That's certainly the way most of our, you know, we see with our users anyway.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Chris, did you want to add anything to that, or there's a few quick fire questions?
No, go for the questions, Tom.
Right, okay, your starter for 10. Does the software work with HMOs?
Yes, it does.
And good answer.
Yeah, I was going to say one big benefit of that is that you get your P&L by property, but you still get your rental history per tenant, and you can track each tenant separately. All
right, no, good. That's, I imagine, very helpful. If there's a change in ownership midway through the year, can Hammock deal with this? So if you had someone owning 25% before, if it goes up to 50%, can we deal with that?
Absolutely. So I won't go into the details of how you do it, but yes, you can.
All right, that's a yes.
If that happens, just ask us and we'll show you.
Okay. Mike asks, what about council tax payable when the property is empty for a period? So you're still going to have some costs, but I assume that would just go through as normal, wouldn't it? Just be an expense on a vacant property.
Yeah, if it's available to let, if we're still actively renting, that's fine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, you know, the more expenses you track, the lower your tax bill will be. So yeah, definitely can track those.
We've had some Tony ask about Excel. We currently just use Excel. Is that sufficient?
Mm-hmm.
It can be sufficient. There'll be some other kind of way it's got to be submitted. There'll be I'll be technical with it, but you can be providing us with Excel details on a quarterly basis, and we can submit on that. I think from the MTD, it works. From the other benefits of the landlord that we're seeing here, and we'll come on to. I know some people have asked about costings and fees and things. We'll come on to that in a minute, but it's the other added benefits for landlords as to why to use the product.
Okay. Can the software be used before the introduction of MTD? I assume the answer to that is yes, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'll give you the easy ones. We've answered that one. Someone is asking about the non-resident landlord scheme and whether the software can deal with those deductions and payments due to HMRC as appropriate.
So this being the tax withheld to pay over to the revenue.
Yeah.
I doubt no, because it's not meant as to act as the letting agent who would normally be doing that. So it would track you'd be able to categorise the expense if you'd had the deduction in a way, but you wouldn't be doing the submission. That would be on the letting agent.
Yeah, I suspect there would be some manual part of that process, I suspect.
All right, but it can help. Okay, I hear you. And then final question for the time being, I think from me, people asking, so you've mortgaged a property, you make a payment every month, every quarter, etc. to the bank. How do we deal with the split of what's the capital and interest elements of those?
Yeah, so that's when I showed you that split payment where I split it into like admin fee and something else. If you've got a repayment mortgage, you can take that first payment, you can split that between this much principal, this much interest, and then Hammock learns that as well. So next month you won't have to do anything. Hammock will auto track it and auto split it.
All good. Okay. Right. Those are all the questions from me for now, but thank you all for typing away there. Much appreciated. Is there anything else? Go on.
There's just a couple of little bits from me. So
yeah,
everything we've covered so far is kind of bookkeeping tax stuff, which obviously BKL are also interested in, but there is a ton of stuff in here which is just for the landlord. So I'll just quickly take you through just a couple of them. So we've got this overview screen here, so you can sort of see visually how your P&L is doing. By the way, I should say all of this is in a mobile app as well. So once you are set up, very much encourage you to just download the app and you can really just do it, sitting on the sofa. Over here, we can give you live up-to-date property valuations, track your loan to value. It's really simple. So if I come in here and I want to get a new valuation on 11 Newcastle Road, I can just click in here and say, right, this is a 3-bed, terrace, and that will update that for you. That comes from third parties such as Zoopla, Rightmove, Land Registry, etc. So it is, if you live in an area where there are property purchases happening, it will be up to date and live. You can check your occupancy rates, you can check upcoming payments, you can even compare rental yields across your properties, both at current valuation and at purchase price. You can, if I had any arrears, that it would highlight them here as well. One kind of final thing I want to talk about, just because we've got landlords on here and I know a lot of landlords don't know about this yet, but there is a huge change coming in 3 years' time. So some government legislation which basically says that if your property, every rental property in the UK has to have an energy rating of a C or above, and if you don't, you won't be able to rent the property anymore. One thing you can do in Hammock straight away as soon as you add your property is we pull in those EPC reports. So if I go into, say, 141 Corn Street, I use this one just because it's a really good example of a property that actually is at a D rating. But if you look at this, it has the potential to be up to a B. So what I would say is landlords, when you add your properties, do check your EPCs. If this isn't a C and it's lower, you have a decision to make. Do you do the work to get it up? And it does give you some recommendations on your EPC report. And some suggested costings, but you've basically got to decide, do I want to do that work or do I want to sell the property? And we're already seeing the properties that are D and below, the property valuations are dropping because investors are not really that interested in buying a property that they have to do work on. So something for you, and I think as the accountant you should also be looking at this as well, really useful. And then just down here, I've already showed you the document section, but you can also add notes, set reminders, you can check your calendar so you can see what you've got coming up this week or this month, etc. So there is a ton of stuff in here. That's kind of the end of the demo, I guess, as it was. Just a couple of pieces. I don't know, were you going to cover like the onboarding support or is this? No, you can go for it. So as I've sort of mentioned, I think a few times in this, the only thing you really have to do as the landlord is register. So you're going to get the link from BKL. And once you register, obviously you can get started if you want to, add your properties, add your bank account, but within 24 hours, one of our support team is going to contact you and offer you that onboarding session. I say it's a one-to-one session, so it's just you and our support team at a date and time of your choice. And it's about 45 minutes to an hour, kind of depends. If you've only got 1 or 2 properties, it really doesn't take very long. And they will take you through step by step how you get set up. If you're the type of person though who actually goes, I've seen the demo, it looks super easy, I'm happy to do it myself, absolutely fine. You may benefit from our training videos, which you'll find in the top right hand corner. Just click on here. This takes you to, it's all sorts of videos in here. The first section is the basics, adding properties, connecting bank accounts, tracking rent. But then underneath that, all sorts of stuff, how do I split a transaction? How do I handle a refund, etc., etc. They're all about a minute long. So they're all there at your fingertips. And just finally, any additional questions, this is what our live chat's for. So this is, this comes straight through to our London team. It may even come through to me, but whoever answers it first, you just send us a message and we'll come back, give you the help that you need. If you need a follow-up call, we can do that. If you want to book in an onboarding, we can do that. So you just tell us what you need and we're there to help.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll just see if there's any more questions before we go back to the slides. Let's have a look. Anything? Can we track costs not directly associated with a specific property? That's something like accountancy fees, I imagine, or something like that.
Yeah, so with stuff like that, you can decide. So let me just click on here. Actually, let me click on an expense, it'll be easier. Let's use your example. If this was my accountancy fees, rather than link to a property, I just click here and go, actually, I'm going to link that on a portfolio level and say, right, I'm just going to link that to my personal properties. Okay, so I picked the wrong category, but yeah, essentially you can link it on a portfolio. All
right, so, okay. And a lot of people asking about fees and charges, so maybe we should move on to that now. Yep. Let me go back to the slides, if I may. Let's see if this bit of technology works.
While you're doing that, Tony, the bit to really mention here is this, we're sending out a link to get people to sign up to Hammock. That's for BKL clients. We'll be able to see when people aren't clients and they won't be able to join. But of course, joining Hammock separate is one thing, but becoming a client of BKL is another. And so the next steps, this is really, again, for our BKL client side of things. Obviously, register Hammock using the link that we're going to provide. So it links into our main source so we can see and we can track and we have access and we can help as well. Link the bank accounts, which the onboarding will do, and assist you with part through the and book the onboarding call essentially.
Just on that, so the one thing that you would actually need to do before the onboarding session is to connect your bank account, because to connect your bank account, and if some of you may have used open banking before, but if you haven't, it's a really simple process, but you do effectively basically log into your online banking. So there's personal information there that our team certainly don't want to see. So that's the one thing we'd ask you to do beforehand. Once you've done that, that's when you book in for your call and we take you through everything else.
Okay.
So then probably the next steps, which covers fees. Now, obviously, you can do nothing at the moment. Don't need to sign up to Hammock. You can do Excel spreadsheets. You can do other bits and pieces. But we and other accountants would have to look at a fee situation as to can we do it at the current fee level if we've got additional work. So there's potential for fees to increase. We do nothing. At BKL, we're saying if we sign up for Hammock, pretty much there's no fees to Hammock. Everything's dealt with via BKL. We've covered software subscriptions. That's fine. Nothing extra goes to Hammock at all. I'd expect a marginal increase in fees to cover software costs and some additional time, but it's not. We're not talking substantial amounts. That side, I think the side that BKL are committing to is where we've got individuals that are signing up on Hammock and are actively using Hammock, and that's in both situations. When we're talking about fees, it's really additional time for BKL. But sign up to Hammock, use Hammock, and use us, use them for assistance. Signing up on direct debit, whether it be quarterly or half yearly with BKL, which is easy to do, then we're absolutely committing to keeping clients on the current fee structure. We're not looking to do this as a big money-making exercise for BKL. We're not looking to pass charges on for subscriptions to clients. We're trying to commit to offering a good service to our clients. And hopefully you can see the added benefits there. And equally, we're trying to do this without adding in substantial fees to individuals. So, we're putting investment in, and we'd like to think that clients will equally put investment in it too. So the ultimate investment is this is by going on a direct debits arrangement, and that's it. There shouldn't be increased fees. That's as simple as it is. For those separately that aren't with BKL clients, Hammock's available. Not going to not promote Hammock. It's out there. You can go online and you can look at it and you can pay the fees that are there. That's fine.
And just if I can just jump in, just because I work with hundreds of accountants, it's very, very rare this offer that if you sign up to Hammock and sign up to direct debits and for MTD your fees are not going to change. That is an incredible deal. I just want to know, because obviously this is the only accountant you deal with, so you probably don't aware of that. Every accountant I speak to is, will be putting their fees up in some way. So this really is an absolutely amazing deal.
It's part of that commitment of we understand that clients will have to use the software as well as us. So that there are some stipulations on that, signing up and not doing any input at all. We have to have conversations, but on the whole, we want to keep clients happy. We want to modernise with clients, want clients to modernise. So there's give and take on both ways on this.
Okay, couple more questions, and if I may. My wife and I own 3 properties, 2 in my name, 1 in hers. Do we have separate portfolios with 2 logins, or one portfolio with 2 separate, or one portfolio with 2 separate you know what I'm trying to say.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You would have one Hammock account. You can both have a login, or you could just have one of you has a login. It's up to you. Within that Hammock account, you would set up 2 portfolios. One for one owner, one for the other owner, and then just make sure you assign the right property to the right portfolio. But yeah, you certainly don't need to be duplicating work. Just one of you doing the work within one account would be fine.
Okay, and another anonymous question: what happens to all this data if we leave BKL or Hammock? Well, it's not allowed. I'm sorry.
So there are legal requirements. Like when you sign up to our software, like we have legal requirements that we have to hold certain data for a certain amount of time. So basically, you will find all of that in our privacy policy, but everything we do is basically in line with government regulations. We don't hold anything we don't need to hold.
I'm assuming from BKL point of view, we will simply cancel the BKL access. Essentially,
yeah, so
individuals can still have their.
Yeah, good point actually. So if you're using Hammock and you're a BKL client, and for whatever reason you stop being a BKL client, you then have the option. You can take on the subscription yourself, but obviously you won't be getting it free. You'll be paying our standard pricing, or you can just say, look, I don't want to use the software anymore. Up to you, but with
know where you live, yes.
Yeah, well, with MTD, you're going to need a digital solution anyway, so I would say just stick with BKL.
Thank you. Okay, I think that pretty much brings us to the end for today. Thank you for all your questions. I hope we've tried to answer most of them. Here are our contact details, and I'm sure if there's anything more you'd like to know, do feel free to drop us an email at those addresses. I'm sure there's plenty more details on the Hammock website for those of you who'd like further details there. Some people have still been asking about costings, but James, I'm sure if they get in touch with you, you can assist us as necessary there. Finally, look, we should mention at BKL, if this is only part of the services we offer for landlords, if mortgages, insurances, again, we'd be very happy to help there and put you in touch with the right person if you want to drop Chris or me an email and all of that. So thank you all very much for attending. I hope you found that useful. As I say, we will send out copies of the slides and a link to this webinar. Again, we'll try and see if there's a couple of questions, unfortunately, I've not quite got around to, but we'll try and respond either privately or publicly if they're of general interest to you. But I hope that's been helpful. And do join us again in the near future. We will do a webinar on aligning the basis period, so that's certainly one future topic. But if there's anything else you'd like us to cover, again, feel free to drop me an email and we'll see which one of the team we can volunteer to cover any particular topics. We are hoping to do one on crypto soon, so watch this space. But for now, thank you all. Do take care. We look forward to hearing from you soon. And thank you, James, for joining us. So all the best, everyone. Bye-bye now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.